Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, my name's Jenny and this is Arnold the Praying Penguin, and we create videos every Saturday about prayer, about exploring the Bible and about living out your faith. And this week we wanted to do a bit of a second trimester recap because I am now 28 weeks pregnant, which means I'm officially in the third trimester. So we're going to look back at the second trimester and talk about some of the symptoms I had, things that I went through, and some of the pregnancy essentials, things that I think would be really helpful for anyone else going through their second trimester. If you're not interested in pregnancy and baby related stuff, that is absolutely fine. We'll be back on Wednesday with some more prayer related content. But if you are interested, let's jump straight in. So I've made lots of notes on my phone so I actually remember all of the things I wanted to talk about and don't just forget half the symptoms. Because the second trimester has felt like a very long time. Like the end of the first trimester feels like a very long time ago now. And I think different people seem to classify the second trimester slightly differently, but I think on the whole it's kind of from 13 weeks to 28 weeks. So now that I'm 28 weeks, I'm out of the second trimester into the third trimester. But people do seem to disagree on when exactly the third trimester starts, but I don't think it matters too much. But it has felt like a very long trimester, definitely longer than the first one, but I think that's because I didn't find out I was pregnant until about 7 weeks, so you kind of skip that first chunk. And for a lot of people, the second trimester is kind of that sweet spot in the middle. You've kind of had the morning sickness of the first trimester all over and done with, that stops, but you haven't got to the point where you're like really big and really feeling that kind of heaviness in the third trimester. So kind of a lot of people really enjoy the second trimester and would say that that's their favourite. Personally, I think I would disagree with that because that hasn't really been my experience of the second trimester. But also I had a very easy first trimester, so I think my second trimester definitely felt harder than my first trimester, but I'm aware I had a very easy first trimester. And it is worth remembering that every single pregnancy, every single woman is completely different, and this is just my experience of my second trimester, but it will be really different for lots of different people. So the symptoms. Okay, first one, burping. I mentioned this in my pregnancy announcement video that I was burping all the time, and this has probably been one of my most consistent all throughout the second trimester, just constant burping and a lot of burping, and it's very weird and not very nice really. And then I've had heartburn, a lot of heartburn, and kind of indigestion, heartburn, that kind of icky feeling. And alongside that, queasiness. I kind of don't really say that I've felt sick because I've never felt that I'm actually going to be sick, but I've definitely felt kind of that queasiness, that kind of building up to maybe I will feel sick in a minute. And I link this very closely to heartburn because I'm not quite sure whether it's the heartburn that's making me feel queasy or whether they're two kind of separate symptoms, because they always happen together, they always come hand in hand for me. Another symptom I've had is rib pain. So at the kind of bottom of my ribs on both sides and kind of front and back, I've had kind of just weird occasional pain, particularly when I wake up in the morning. And I did speak to my physio about this a little while ago, and I'll talk about my physio later. But she kind of said that actually that's very common because your ribs kind of flare outwards to make room for baby. So it makes sense that they would be sore and a little bit uncomfortable. Okay, next, my belly button. So I have always had an innie belly button, and it is now desperately trying to become an outie belly button, which is very weird. At first it just got very solid and very hard, which was very weird, and now it's just kind of slowly trying to eke its way out and push outwards, which is weird. The next thing I wrote down was that I had to take my wedding ring off, and I think this was probably just me overreacting, but one day it was quite hard to get it off and it was quite stuck on my finger, so I at that point took it off completely and haven't put it back on. I don't think my fingers have actually swollen that much at all, but I kind of decided I might as well take it off then and not risk it getting stuck on at some point. Another thing I've noticed in the second trimester is lots and lots of movement from baby. So I first started feeling little flutterings, little kind of movements just before 20 weeks. And I can definitely see why they say that people really confuse it with gas, because that's kind of the only way that I can think to describe it. It just kind of felt like these really tiny, like gassy movements in your belly. And then since then, those movements have just kind of got more and more clear, more and more obvious. They've definitely got a bit more of like a pattern to them, certain times of day when baby moves a lot more, and then when baby's quiet. And another really fun thing about that is when baby kind of responds to stuff that I'm doing. So if I like poke or rub a certain area of my belly, and then they'll move like in that area, I can kind of get them to move. I think they say that baby also responds to light and to loud noises at this stage, which again is just really fun to be able to kind of see them interacting with the world a bit more. And I can also now feel those movements from the outside most of the time. Not all the time, sometimes I can only feel it on the inside, but quite a bit of the time, if I put my hand on my belly, I can physically feel that from the outside as well, which is fun. Another thing that's changed a lot during the second trimester is that my bump has grown quite a lot. Definitely at the beginning of the second trimester, I probably just looked like I'd had a big meal. Like, it definitely wasn't like definitely a bump, and now it's definitely a bump. Like, I'd have had to eat quite a lot to have reached this kind of tummy size just from cake, which I'm probably hungry enough to eat that much cake, but it's not just cake. I'll insert some photos of my bump that I've taken over the last few weeks to kind of show how it's grown a little bit. But it's definitely getting bigger, and that definitely means I can't like bend over at the waist. I can't kind of squish my belly in that way anymore. That makes me feel really queasy and it's not very nice. So like bending over to like put shoes on, for example, you've got to just be a lot more careful and think about it a lot more. And then another symptom that I've had on a kind of only occasionally, on a bit of an occasional basis, are leg cramps in the middle of the night. And I hate these. These are one of my least favourite symptoms of pregnancy so far. They're horrible. You just wake up in the middle of the night with really bad cramp in your calf muscle, and you basically have to like jump out of bed, which is hard with a large belly and not super easy, but you have to kind of get out of bed to be able to stretch that muscle. So I've got a couple of different like leg stretches that I try and do before I go to bed now to help stop that. And luckily it has only been occasionally, but it's very painful when it happens. And then finally, probably the biggest kind of symptom and issue that I faced in the second trimester that I wanted to talk about was pelvic girdle pain. So disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a midwife, I'm not a physiotherapist, I am nothing. This is just my experience and kind of what I've been told and done a bit of research into pelvic girdle pain. But my understanding is that when you're pregnant, there's a lot of hormones in your body that are helping your body and your ligaments and your joints to relax, to help you to be able to make room for baby and then give birth. And in your pelvis, that means that the joints at the back become a lot looser, the ligaments aren't holding it so strictly in place. So your pelvis moves a lot more than it would normally move. And that can be a problem. It can kind of grind at the front, or it can just move too far apart. It can do lots of weird things, weird and wonderful body parts that we have. And for some women that can cause a lot of pain and a lot of problems. So for me, I started having pelvic girdle pain probably about 23 weeks pregnant or so. And mine started quite suddenly after running. So this isn't saying that running is the cause of it or what caused it. It may have kind of exacerbated it because it's very like uneven where I was running. I've been running absolutely fine up until that point. I'd wanted to keep running for as much as I could in my pregnancy to kind of keep fit and keep active, but it started quite suddenly after running. And then since then, for me, that has meant that things like walking is quite uncomfortable, particularly if I walk too fast or walk uphill or walk for like a particularly long time. That's quite uncomfortable. Turning over in bed is the worst, the absolute worst. It's very bizarre, but it's incredibly painful to just roll over in bed. That is a big struggle. Also, if I'm getting dressed in the morning and I want to put trousers on, I have to sit down, because to stand up on one leg is very painful. It's that kind of like disbalance of the pelvis, or like the twisting of the pelvis. So those are the kind of symptoms and different things that I've noticed going on in my body during the second trimester. And again, just everybody's pregnancy is completely different. So just because I had some of these symptoms doesn't mean that you will. And I know there's plenty of other symptoms that I haven't experienced during this pregnancy too. But now I wanted to talk about pregnancy essentials, some of the things I've absolutely loved having during this pregnancy that have really helped me, and I've got a few that are particular to pelvic girdle pain and then some that are a bit more general that I think everyone should have. We start with the general ones. My first recommendation is ginger nuts, or just any kind of ginger biscuits, and it probably doesn't even need to be biscuits. I really like ginger biscuits, so this is great for me, but basically anything with that strong ginger taste, and I've heard that mint is also good for this, like the strong mint flavour. And then ideally I like to have the biscuits because they're just something like dry to nibble on, but these really help me with if I'm feeling queasy. They just really help to kind of settle my stomach a little bit. If I'm just feeling slightly queasy, these are my go-to. So particularly in the evening, like just before I go to bed, this is what really helps, because lying down is what makes my kind of queasiness and heartburn worse, so that's always really bad at night time. Another thing I use quite a lot is heartburn and indigestion relief liquid. This is the liquid one. Again, I'm not a doctor, so check with your doctor or your midwife before you take any medication, little disclaimer. But this has been really helpful for me, and it's one of the kind of like fastest acting medications, which is what's really nice about it, because it just kind of provides that kind of relief so instantly from heartburn. Okay, this next thing isn't actually an item, it's an online thing, but another thing that I found really useful during the second trimester has been Facebook Marketplace. So this has kind of been the trimester where we've started to get things for the baby and to just look out for things. And Facebook Marketplace has been amazing for finding some amazing baby clothes. We found like a changing mat, we found a nappy bag, just things like that for really great prices. And so much of the stuff on there is like either never used, brand new, or like barely used, like it's been used once or twice. And that's just been like a lot of fun for me to just scroll through all of these baby clothes and baby items and just find some really great things. But also not just for baby. One of the things I found on Facebook Marketplace was a big bundle of maternity clothes, which included kind of maternity jeans, included this dress which is super stretchy and fits a bump perfectly, lots of tops, and even the swimming corset as well. And that's the next thing I want to talk about as a pregnancy essential, is maternity clothes. So I managed to get away with not getting any maternity clothes until about 20 weeks, and that's when I really like stopped fitting into jeans properly, or any other trousers really, and moved over to maternity clothes. So that was really helpful to find those on Facebook Marketplace rather than have to go and spend a lot of money buying them. Also, they've just been so comfortable. Like, I have a pair of maternity jeans that I wear a lot of the time, and they're just so much more comfortable than I was expecting them to be. I thought they would be really tight around my bump, and these ones aren't. They're quite loose, apart from just like a band at the top, and even that isn't particularly tight. It's not uncomfortable in the slightest. It's just, it feels a lot more supportive. It just has lots of space for my bump. The next pregnancy essential I wanted to mention was a prayer journal. So this is a journal that I use, and this is one that I've particularly dedicated to this baby and this pregnancy. So in here I just have prayers that I've written at different stages throughout the pregnancy, and kind of recording my prayers for this pregnancy and for this baby. And I hope to kind of keep that going throughout the rest of the pregnancy, and as they're born and as they're growing up as well. But I found this so useful, partly just because I love prayer journaling. I find it a really helpful way for me to pray and really focus on my prayers and really focus on what it is that I'm praying. But also I think this will be a wonderful thing to look back on once this baby is older, and I can see all the things that I prayed for them and how God answered those prayers along the way as well. And then these next three items I find particularly helpful with my pelvic girdle pain, but I think they would help a lot of pregnant women as well who don't have pelvic girdle pain and who might just have different issues in pregnancy. So the first thing is a pregnancy pillow. So this is the one I have. It's just like a V shape, L shape, whatever you want to call it. And this was actually my mum's one who gave it to me. And it's just really comfy, and I sleep kind of with one side of this in between my knees, and then this end of it kind of tucks underneath my bump and holds that up. And it's just so comfortable. I was sleeping with just like a normal pillow in between my legs, but now I sleep with this and a normal pillow in between my legs to really hold them in place, because again that really helps to keep my pelvis kind of in line if there's like something in between them. But it's just so comfy, and I find that the V shape and the fact that it's tucked under my bump as well means that it doesn't move anywhere near as much as the pillow on its own did. that would often just like fly out of the bed by the morning. And then on the theme of pillows, I also find, basically I have a lot of pillows in bed with me at night. So I have my V-shaped pillow in between my legs and underneath my bump. I have another pillow in between my legs, and then I have a giant penguin. So I think this is an absolute pregnancy essential. So basically I have that other pillow under my bump, and then I hug this penguin, who is called Gangster by the way, because he often wears a hoodie. But he lies like this, and then I'm able to kind of put my arm over him, hug him, and that kind of holds me in a much better position and keeps me on that side. Stops me a little bit from rolling over onto my back, although I think I will probably start to put another pillow behind me to kind of help keep me up and not roll onto my back, because I have a tendency to try and do that. And then another thing that I found really helpful has been a pregnancy support belt. So this one is by Baby Go, and I will link all of the things that I've mentioned down in the description below so you can find them yourself. But this has 3 parts to it. So far I'm only using 2 of them because that's what I've needed. They recommend that you start with this one, and this just tucks under your bump and then goes around you to hold this in place. And the idea is that it kind of scoops your bump up a little bit and takes some of the weight for you. And then in the second trimester you add this bit, so this bit goes around your back and attaches onto that bit of the support belt. And the idea is that this spreads out some of the weight across your back, so that where your bump is getting heavier and heavier, that isn't pulling on a certain part of your back. It keeps it nicely spread out to kind of bear that weight across your back. And then for the third trimester they do also have an extra bit of band that I do have but I haven't got out yet, and that goes kind of over the top of your bump. And I haven't tried that yet, I haven't felt like I needed it, but I will look at it now that I'm in the third trimester and see whether that would help. And then the final thing that I found really helpful, again, isn't an object, but that is a physiotherapist. So again, small disclaimer, I live in the UK, so I'm able to get this on the NHS. I don't have to pay for my physiotherapy. I'm sure in other places you would have to pay for this, which can obviously be a barrier to being able to access these kind of support. But here in the UK, I was able to be referred to the physiotherapist by my midwife when I mentioned to her about the pain in my pelvis. So I was able to go in for an appointment with my physio, who put me through a lot of different kind of exercises to try and see how my body was moving, how my pelvis was moving, what was causing pain, and kind of what my muscles were doing. And then from there, she was able to put me on a kind of a 4-week course of exercise classes, which I'm partway through at the moment. And those have been very helpful, just to kind of strengthen the muscles, make sure everything's working, and just to kind of add some movement in. Obviously I'm only partway through that, so I don't know kind of how effective it's going to be kind of in the long run, but I think they're helping, hopefully. So that was the second trimester. And we're now in the third trimester. I'm very excited to be in this kind of final stretch. We obviously still have like 12 weeks to go, which feels both like a really long time and like it will go very quickly, because we've obviously got like Christmas and New Year in there as well before baby comes, so I think that will go pretty quick. But we hope you've enjoyed this video and maybe found it helpful. Let me know down in the comments if you are pregnant yourself, how far along you are. Maybe what are some of your pregnancy essentials that you've really loved. If you have enjoyed this video and are enjoying our kind of baby related content as well, do give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to see more videos from me and Arnold. And as I said earlier, we'll be back on Wednesday for our next Christmas prayer idea. Bye!